Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for the next part of my nocturnal raid on the marshalling rail yard at Le Mans. Now when I left us last, at the end of the previous video, the formation, I shouldn't really use the word formation because really technically it's a stream, but you know what I mean, and old habits die hard. The British bomber force had reached the target. The escorting and attacking fighters had been leading each other an extremely merry dance. I must say, a combination of rather poor German luck with cards and equally good British luck with cards had allowed the Mosquito to generally keep the German fighters at arm's length. Although, if they do return safely, two of the bomber crews might take issue with that statement of mine. And of course, now that the bombers have entered the flak zone, the fighters not having anything to do, really, they're doing the sensible thing and keeping out of the zone of exploding anti-aircraft shells. So they've really got no one's company except each other's, and they're just taking the opportunity to snipe at one another. The Mosquito has managed to allow the Bf 110 onto its tail. Unbeknown to the British, though, that aircraft is on its last legs in terms of its fuel endurance, so if it doesn't down or damage the Mosquito soon, it will have to break off. The rather lumbering Junkers 88 is a bit frustrated because it's not really the kind of aircraft you want to dogfight a Mosquito with, but it's having a hard time doing anything useful at the moment. Of course, the radar picture is incredibly cluttered. And of course, when I left the previous video behind, I had neglected to do anything with the bombers, even though it was their turn. And the reason for that, as stated last time, is that I wanted to go very carefully through the bomber steps, because they're exactly identical to the daytime bombing steps in this game. But there's a lot of little extra layers. And of course, the Germans have very unhelpfully chosen missed IP as one of their resources for this turn. So just to remind myself what this horrible thing could potentially do to me, looking at missed IP, we draw a random action card at the start of the over target phase. If a red bordered card is drawn, the target cannot be found or positively identified. Oh wait, no, I'm reading miss target. What am I doing? No. The Germans did not choose miss target. I nearly did myself out of a win there. Sorry, everyone. Could almost hear you guys hollering at me. Missed IP. Draw one random action card at the start of the over target phase. Oh, look at those horrible effects. Okay, the British really need to draw a white bordered card, or actually the Germans do, as this is theirs. And they draw a red bordered card, darn it. Oh, we reduce our bombing cards by 2. That is actually quite a painful penalty, I must say. So, all right, we've missed the IP. No point crying over spilt milk. So, I'll start with the Halifaxes first. They have a saturation bomb rating of 6, which means normally they draw 6 cards, but now, of course, this is reduced to 4. Now, the penalties for bombing on a night raid is that all of your bombing results are downgraded, except for a hit. A hit is still a hit, but a direct hit becomes an ordinary hit, and a vital becomes a direct. So I'll just remove the bombing token from the first Halifax, and I'll draw 4 measly cards for it. So the results are a hit, which stays a hit, another one. Okay, 4 hits, that's not too bad. However, we still need to do the German flak. It's got a base value of 4, but it's reduced by 1 because it's night. So they draw 3 cards. Luckily for me, the German flak appears to be about as good as my bombing. So no hits and no interference. So the British have just scored 4 damage points on the marshalling yard. Not too bad, actually. I was expecting it to be a bit worse. I'll just plonk the damage counter there. The second Halifax roars in, hoping to imitate that or maybe even do better. Only 4 cards, sadly. Let's see how we do. So we have... Oh, there's a vital. Nice. A vital and a direct. So effectively, with the knight penalties thrown in, we do have 2 hits and a direct. I'll take it. But what does the German flak say about that? Ooh, the guns are a bit more on target now. So the bomber takes 5 damage. But luckily, none of these have the dreaded crosshair that tells you that your bomb accuracy has been thrown off by the flak. So I'll give that poor bomber 5 damage. But it does still score its direct and 2 hits. Now, looking at the chart, a direct is worth 3 damage. And with the 2 hits thrown in, that's a total of 5. So bomber number 2 actually did a tiny bit better than bomber number 1. Not too bad. Lastly, we have the Lancasters with their beautiful, beautiful blockbusters. Now, the penalty for missing the IP is going to hurt here because the way a blockbuster works is the aircraft carrying it reduces its bombing rating by 2, but each hit does 1 additional point of damage. Now, the Lancaster's base saturation bombing rating is 8, so reducing that by 2 for the blockbusters and then by another 2, unfortunately, for the missed IP leaves me with only 4. Now, given my terrible shuffling, if I get 4 vitals in a row, I'll be a happy man. Oh no! Miss, miss, miss. 1 direct at least, but that's downgraded to a hit. I'll bet you just to add insult to injury, the German flak will throw my aim off. Oh no, they beat the bomber up a bit, but they do 5 damage to it, but nothing throws the aim off. So, okay, 5 damage. Ha, we can take it. We're a whopping great Lancaster. It'll take more than that to knock us down. I really should shut up, shouldn't I? Okay, so just to double check, yeah. So after all that, expending that great big mass of blockbusters, we only do 2 damage. The Halifax crews must be laughing their socks off at us. So 11 damage all told to the marshalling yard. Not exactly the mass destruction I was hoping for, but it's going to have to do. Now, the final thing that happens at the end of the over-target phase is that the aircraft that went over-target have to endure heavy area flak leaving it. But as we've seen from the previous video, because of the nighttime conditions, the heavy flak doesn't really count for anything. So we now move into the first homebound phase. And this is where it's going to get a bit more interesting because more aircraft are due to arrive. On the British side, another Mosquito turns up, which is very welcome by this point, I'm sure. Now, I'm going to give him a drop tank for now, but I'll be doing a little bit of maths in a minute. Sorry, pardon my limbs flying across your field of vision. Right, have we got a medium altitude counter in here? Yes, we do. Hurrah. But it's not just the Brits who are expecting more people to come to the party. The Germans are expecting another BF 110. Now, they can't have it immediately because both sides in this game are restricted by the card mix. And the Germans have only 1 card for the night fight, for this particular model of night fighting BF 110. So they have to wait until that one disengages and leaves before the next one can arrive. Normally, if it was in a bad shape or had no particular advantage, I would break it off. But as it's hanging on quite nicely to the tail of that Mosquito, it actually makes sense to leave it there. So for the moment, the Germans would just patiently wait for their reinforcements, but But it's useful for them to know that the second that aircraft leaves, a replacement can arrive. And it's actually not great news for the Brits because they know that there's this steady build-up of German fighters just waiting to pitch in and do their thing. So, okay. I'll just put that over there. Sorry, pardon me while I shuffle my papers. So I will give the British aircraft its starting hand, and of course, following the number sequence, it becomes aircraft number 4. And despite its performance rating of 6, because it's lugging around a heavy drop tank, it only gets 5 cards to begin with. The other thing you have to do when an aircraft is joining partway through a mission, you have to work out how much fuel it's expended getting there. Now, as it's such a short-ranged mission, 1, 2, 3, this newcomer will have only spent 3 fuel points. So there's the fuel allocation sheet, and yes, confusingly, I am sharing Axis and Allied ones. So there are our 2 Mosquitoes. The one who's been fighting the whole time has got 10 fuel points left. The newcomer has lost 3 just getting here, but otherwise has a full tank of 30. The BF 110 is down to 2, so he will be leaving at the end of this turn. And the Junkers 88 still has a comfortable 14. So the last thing I have to do is see whether this aircraft arrives in time to join in the general melee, or whether he has to wait until the very end. Nope, he arrives on time, so that's great. He can pile straight in. So let's begin with the Messerschmitt 110. Apologies, everyone. I've only just realized I never explained what this counter, the Schrager Music, is. So effectively, this was a system of oblique guns built into the fuselage so that all you had to do was cruise underneath your target, and then you could fire straight up into it. That was the idea behind the Schrager Music. It is very, very useful if you don't have decent cards in your hand that will enable you to attack an aircraft conventionally. You just declare you're going to use it. And the rating on the counter was 2, which means that you draw 2 cards, and if any of them are shooting cards, you can use them. Your target draws its normal turret defense rating -1, so it's quite a useful thing to have. The Germans didn't have as many of these in service as they would like, and in this particular mission, that's the only BF 110 that's so equipped. But he hasn't really had an opportunity to use it, so I mention it for what it is. It's a lovely detail, and I'm glad they've included it, but one very frustrated German pilot who hasn't got a chance to benefit from it yet. So I am going to draw his radar cards for him, and he has got a blue card, very unluckily for the Mozzie. However, his hand is appalling, really, really appalling. So he's just going to curse gently because he can't engage the bombers because he's already engaged with another aircraft. So what he's going to do, because he's going to have to sit out the full round of combat, is he's going to discard one of his maneuvering cards and hope that he gets lots of defensive cards so he can just be a nuisance. That's okay, I suppose. What about this Mosquito? Aha, he has a blue card too. So what is he going to do with this? Normally, the temptation would be to change altitude. A climb or a dive is a great way of shaking an opponent off in this game. But he's feeling a bit more confident about his survivability. And also at the back of his mind, he's vaguely aware of how long he's been in combat with this German. And he strongly suspects the other guy's fuel needle must be hovering towards the I'm not very happy part of the gauge. So he is going to risk staying at altitude. and he's simply going to try and maneuver away to reduce the German player's advantage. So he plays his maneuvering. The German player will try and lock him in his sights with a full throttle this time, which unfortunately the Brit can't counter, so maybe that was a rather bad move after all. He's going to ditch his Out of the Sun card, because there's not much point keeping that at the moment. And he's going to draw 2 cards and hope he gets something good. Oh, well, he can certainly evade for a long time. That's going to be fairly useful. So what about our friend, the big Junkers over there? He draws his 3 radar cards, and he has a blue one as well. So he is going to try and chop down one of those bombers. That mosquito can't do anything about it. Oh no, and I've just been bounced by another night fighter. What are you doing here? Oi. Come to offer me tactical advice as usual. So that Mozzie can't intervene because he's got an enemy fighter on his tail. But can the newly arrived one do something before the giant black cat eats us all? And the answer is yes, he has a half loop card. So he is going to, yes, Oscar, that's exactly what he's going to do. So he is going to play the half loop on the Junkers in the hope that he can distract it from the bombers. And thankfully, the Junkers is in a bit of a quandary. He really wants to elbow his way past this annoying British aircraft and get at the heavies that have just been bombing the Reich, or at least its outer territories. But again, caution. He's not the most maneuverable of aircraft anyway. He's certainly less maneuverable than this big thing here. And ace pilot cards are hard to come by. So he may find himself compelled to let this one go, which he is going to do. He's going to accept that the mosquitoes got in his way, but he is going to make the Britisher pay by shooting at him instead. So he plays the In My Sights card. Which, you have anything to add, Oscar? Anything useful? I think the Brit should play that card. What do you think? No, he's leaving it up to me. Okay, the British player is going to counter the In My Sights card with a chop throttle card, which the German decides is not worth responding to. So once again, an attack on the bomber stream has been thwarted. And the poor Junkers now has to let its very slow capacity for regaining a useful airspeed kick in. And finally, we get to the turn of the newly arrived Mozzie. And its radar draw was absolutely horrible, so it can't really do anything about that, other than draw some fresh cards. He's going to keep the 3 he's got because he's entitled to draw 3 anyway. Ooh, there's some good offensive cards there. If only, okay. The cat is now going for the camera. Oscar, don't grab the stick. What the heck are you doing, man? We can't survive those stresses. Don't put us into a dive like that again. Honestly, flies like a complete maniac. And how on earth did this end up over here? Anyway, moving on. So we move to the next turn of the game, and I'm just going to mark off everyone's fuel usage, if Oscar will allow it. Oscar, may I mark off the fuel usage? Thank you very much. So the only aircraft which is perilously short of fuel and has to break off is the BF-110. So he has to go to the fuel disengagement procedure. If I just find my handy cheat sheet. He draws an In My Sights 1 burst. Sorry, Oscar, beg your pardon. So here is the disengagement table, and he is there. Sorry, I don't know if you can see this with the shadow. I might move my finger. He is there, In My Sights 1 burst. So that means he's damaged if he breaks off. he is tailing another fighter, which means he's down 2 levels because he's in an advantageous position. But the other modifier he has to pay attention to is that it's a nighttime. It's a nighttime fuel disengagement, so he goes up 2 levels again. So it means he does break away, but he is damaged in the process. Now, whether that's because he landed hard at his airfield is not, or something else is not specified. But anyway, this fighter departs, which means the Mozzie is free. Happy days. And I'm just going to make a note that a BF 110 has been damaged so far in this engagement. So there we go. Not a bad result for the British, even though it was more a passive case of the poor German being damaged by circumstances rather than enemy action. Now, the other thing that this means is as we get into a new turn, one of the German BF 110s that was waiting in the wings can immediately come in and join the fray. Sorry, I'll just put that back. So he comes in as aircraft number 5. Now, according to the German list, he is an ace pilot. We have young Yabs here, who gives bonuses to horsepower, performance, and has a decent radar operator. Now, that is extremely bad news for the Brits. So we need to watch this guy and possibly do something about him. Luckily, in terms of him starting off on a clumsy note, the Germans did list his aircraft as having a drop tank as well. So he's not going to be throwing himself around too much to begin with. Also, crucial question, does he enter at the beginning of the turn or towards the end? Oh, nope, he plunges right in. He's clearly been waiting for his moment. So, top of the round again. This is now the first aircraft in the turn order, now that the first BF 110 is gone. And his radar draw is, hurrah, favourable. Okay. Now, sensing very correctly that this aircraft is the most dangerous German one on the board, the Mosquito's going to go right for him. And he's going to play in sequence 2 cards. The first is an In My Sights 1 burst. And our poor friend Yabs, who's only just wandered in here and is going, what the heck is going on, has only got 1 evasion card. Now, he's not going to waste that deflecting a single point of damage, so he's going to be a bit of a hero and just take it. So the emboldened Mosquito is going to use the second of his 2 bursts and score another 2 hits on him. Now, again, very conscious of the risk, Yabs is just going to grit his teeth and take it. After that, of course, the Mosquito rather runs out of puff, but likes the idea of having a bit of insurance, so it's just going to draw 2 cards. Ah, okay. One can have rather too much insurance in this game. So moving on to the Junkers. He's got a good radar pickup too, and he is going to attempt again to go for the bombers. Now, of course, actually, Mozzie 1 is beautifully positioned to get in his way. He's going to play a full throttle card to make a confounded nuisance of himself. That's actually a really bad hand. The German is just going to grumble, content himself with the fact that the Mosquito has possibly wasted a maneuvering card, a full throttle card, and just draw another card to bring his hand up. Really isn't fun trying to treat a Junkers 88 as a fighter. So, play now goes to the second Mozzie. Has your situational awareness improved since last turn? And the answer is a resounding yes. So first thing he's going to do is divest himself of that drop tank, because all it's doing is causing him problems at the moment. And besides, he emptied it last turn anyway. And he is going to come to the same conclusion as the first Mozzie, that poor old Yabs over there needs to be removed from existence, and he has the means to do it. So he is going to play an, ironically enough, Out of the Sun. Yes, I know it's a night mission. It's thematic, okay? Out of the Moon card at Yabs, who, much to his deep regret, can't actually dodge it. So gunfire slams into his already battered ME-110, scoring 3 hits and damaging him severely enough. Where are my damage counters? To flip his aircraft. Poor man, he's only just entered the combat zone and he's getting all this aggressive nonsense already. So Yabs's bird is severely wounded now. And he is not a very happy bunny, I don't think. Hasn't even had a chance to drop his drop tank yet, poor man. The Mozzie really likes having all these good offensive cards, so he's just going to draw one, yet another nasty offensive card, and sit on his laurels. Now, poor Yabs. His radar's a bit beaten up, but luckily his good radar operator is on the ball. And oh yes, he can see very well, thanks very much. And he is going to try and get in on that very badly beaten up Lancaster because he wants to at least damage it. The first Mozzie can't do a thing about that. What about the second Mozzie? No, he doesn't have the right card either. So Yabs goes, oh wait, before he does anything else, sorry, needs to regain a bit of maneuverability. He is going to get rid of that unnecessary drop tank. And he's going to go straight in Out of the Moon again. Head-on attack, so the Lancaster only gets one defensive card, but oh dear, it's shooting back fairly effectively. So what Yabs is going to do, because in the ordinary run of things, he doesn't want to be thrown off by the Lancaster's fire, and he doesn't want to waste that precious barrel roll. It's the only defensive card he's got, so he's just going to take it. So he scores 3 hits on the Lancaster thanks to his heavy cannons, which flips the aircraft to its damaged side and sends it well on the way to perdition. Almost, it just needs a bit more of a prod. And in return, he takes an extra nudge of damage, which pushes him perilously close to the brink as well. But arguably, it was worth it. So because his plane is rather badly kicked, he only gets 1 card. But I suppose that went as well as it could do in the circumstances. So I'm just going to mark off the fuel usage. Yabs's rather battered kite has only got 14 fuel left. The Junkers is down to 8. And the second Mosquito is down to 23. And this Mosquito is down to 0. So he is going to have to disengage as well. So he draws a card, a full throttle. Where does that get him? So a full throttle puts him at any other card. All things considered, because he's not engaged, that is a safe escape for the British fighter. Despite the fact that he was incredibly low on fuel, he manages to make a getaway. So the only downside, the only downside for the British is that the newly arrived Mozzie is now very much on its lonesome and still has some bombers to shepherd home. So we now come to the final turn of the game. It's a bit late for any other reinforcements to come in. The Germans did have another fighter lined up, but I don't think it's going to be able to intervene in time. Um, I've just realized, and I do apologize for this, guys, I've forgotten to charge my phone properly, so the battery is about to die. So what I'm going to do is I'll stop here because we're at the beginning of the final turn. I'll just make my apologies and do something about my phone when I've ended this recording. And I will bring out a final video so that so that you can see the final fight through and then the scoring as both sides finally part company. And I can also talk about some of the interesting decisions that have to be made by both sides. So the main thing is it all comes down to young Yabs here because he's in a very, very bad state and he has to consider whether it's worth him hanging around trying to see if he can knock more spots off the British, or whether discretion ought to be the better part of valor and he gets out of there, because if he is shot down, it's not just the value of his plane in victory points to the British, it's also his value as an ace, so he needs to consider that. The Junkers, who hasn't been touched really, can just carry on doing his thing. And for the British Mosquito, who is probably feeling fairly confident, I mean, he's not going anywhere till he knows the bombers are safe. But I will have a mull over this while I am letting my phone charge. I'm so sorry for that oversight on my part. We were so near, and yet so far. But I hope you've enjoyed this video too. Thank you again for sitting through the most of the return flight from the bombing mission. As always, huge thanks to both my eternally patient and long-suffering veterans and also any newbies who've joined me. Whoever you guys are, you're more than welcome. Please take a seat. Take a seat. There's plenty in the ready room. And yeah, I appreciate any feedback you guys may wish to offer. As always, it's really good to have the correspondence and the exchanges. It's one of the best things about this. And as always, your company. That is always the bit that really makes these videos so much fun. So thank you for tagging along for this rather hairy nighttime ride. It's not over yet. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.